Okay, so what we've done here is I actually started a game before the demo, and we're several cards into the deck. And the situation at present is we have families A, B, and C, each of which are full. The game rewards you for keeping your families full, that is, keeping a man, woman, and child in the corresponding family box on the bottom of your screen. If you have less than a full complement in a family, you're going to be punished severely when you're hit by a raid, either a tribal or enemy raid. In the game, the term enemy refers to the colonial inhabitants of New Mexico, whereas the term tribe refers to hostile tribes, mainly the Ute and the Comanche, but also could be the Apache, the Hopi, or the Zuni. Right now we have three families on the map, families A, B, and C. They are on raid box, in the areas of Shiprock, San Juan Valley, and Hopi Land. Now let me talk about the raid boxes real quick, because each box on the map, each box on that point-to-point portion of the map has a set of numbers on it. The unparenthesized number is its raid box value and is always the number that you're going to use. Whenever the game directs you to a raid box number, that's the number you will use, except when specifically told to use the parenthesized value, and generally speaking, that only applies to a family with horses conducting certain actions. So right now I've got family A in raid box 3 of Shiprock. The raid boxes, the number beneath it is known as the raid box value, or RBV. That particular value is going to increase as you go further into an area. What that represents is it's an abstract representation of the further you go into an area, the more rugged it becomes. And in certain areas, you have to go through some rugged terrain before the terrain opens up again into a new area. For example, you have to go into raid box 3 of Shiprock before you can actually enter the Zuni Mountains. So this is just an abstract way of showing a very complex maze of canyon lands, mountains, and actually some plains. So the situation right now, we have family C in Hopi Land, also has planted corn in there. There's planted corn all by itself in the Zuni Mountains in raid box 3. The reason for that being is family C had planted corn there, but were forced to move on due to hostility from the Zuni. The family B up in San Juan Valley has got some corn planted there as well. Looking over at the tracks on the left, we have 7 military points and we have 13 culture points. So we're doing quite well in culture. Military points are harder to come by, and I did have some unfortunate luck in raiding New Mexico early on. We took a couple military hits quite early in the game. The Pueblo tribes have been subjugated, so those of you that have seen the YouTube videos, you know a little bit about that. So the Pueblos are out of play for the rest of the game. And I seem to have forgotten to flip the black stripe counters. Let me quick do that.
You probably should also discard the historical card.
Yep, that's also correct. I'll leave it up here just so you can see what a historic event card looks like, but that card is definitely out of play. The enemy, if you look at the instruction display, the enemy is going to execute the topmost instruction on the active column at any given time. So we can see right now that the enemy is poised to raid. However, that's not a guaranteed thing. There is a 1 in 6 chance that raid counter will flip over. Actually, the odds are a little bit better than that technically, because we're going to roll 2 dice, and if any one of them is a 1, that counter could flip over and reveal a different instruction. What that represents is your scouts are telling you that the New Mexicans are about to raid you. So the player has some limited intel of what the enemy is about to do to him, but that intel is by no means certain. So here we go. If you want to follow the sequence of play, click on the button on the toolbar that says sequence of play, and we'll step through this process. The first thing we're going to do is draw a card off the deck. I'll just put it out here on this corner of the map. And we see here that it is an operations card. So following the sequence of play, we see it is operations card. Player is now given the opportunity to preempt the very top part of the card. And every card is going to be played from top to bottom. It's very important to remember. We're given the option here to preempt, and that means we get to go first. So by going first, we would have to spend 3 action points from our pool, and we happen to have exactly 3 action points available. If you see on the tracks to the left, we could preempt and go first. If we were to do so, the enemy would only receive 4 action points, the parenthesized value on the operations card. If we do not preempt, the enemy will go first, and they will receive 5 action points with which to do dastardly things to us. For a variety of reasons, Mike, I'm thinking I want to do planning on this particular card. I want that Elder, and I want that die roll of 6 on that card. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to let the enemy go first. So they're going to, I'm not going to spend my action points here. So on the sequence of play, we're going to let the enemy go first. Now to follow, the actual sequence for an enemy operations segment is somewhat involved. Once you do it once or twice, you realize what's happening, and it actually goes very quickly. But there are some special conditions that can alter things, and so to make the game as playable as possible, I've created some new play aids. If you click on the button that says Flowcharts at the top of your screen, and then click on the top part of that, there you'll see there's a little drop-down menu on the top of that window. Select the enemy operations segment, and you'll see that there's a flowchart with a whole bunch of green boxes, and we're going to step through the 5 steps of an enemy operations segment. The first thing we're going to do is check for special conditions. Right now, there are no special conditions in play. The peace talks and the Defend New Mexico counters are not in the Raided Cubes box. If you look at the Raided Cubes box on the map, which is in the middle right-hand side of the map, you'll see that there are no such counters in that box. So none of those conditions exist, so we'll go to step 2. Step 2 says we're going to collect enemy APs. Here's how that works. To collect enemy APs, you look at the value on the card that you're going to use. In this case, we're going to use 5 because we did not preempt. So they're going to get 5 APs plus 1 AP per cube in the subjugation of the Pueblos box. Until the Pueblos are subjugated, the Spanish tend to kind of leave you alone. As soon as they're subjugated, you have their undivided attention. So that's going to give them a total now of 8 APs, 5 plus the 3, but then minus 1 AP for each cube in the Raided Cubes box. See, the more you raid New Mexico, the more you disrupt the enemy's plans. So they're actually going to get a net of 7 action points, and we will draw those counters into the available enemies, available APs box here below the enemy instruction display. So we got 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, we've collected the APs. Following the flowchart, we go to step 3, which is flip random instructions. To do this, we simply roll 2 dice. Oh, and we dodged a bullet here, I think, because we rolled a 1 and a 2. We're going to flip the active column instructions, looking at the enemy instruction display on the map. We're going to flip instruction markers on the active column corresponding to the die roll we just made. So since we rolled a 1 and a 2, markers on the active column corresponding to the die roll 1, die roll 2 symbol will flip over, revealing subjugation, subvert the natives and a raid. So the raid that we thought was immediately going to happen actually is going to be deferred. But we still will get hit by a raid here because the enemy has enough action points to do this. All right, now we can go to step 4, which is execute those instructions. Subvert the natives means you can spend the enemy will spend from 1 to 3 action points. They will always spend the maximum allowed. So they're actually going to spend 3 of those, and they're going to do subvert the natives, which ordinarily will cause you to roll 1 die for each action point spent. So in this case, you'd roll 3 dice. But since there are no outposts on the map, this particular instruction is going to default into a build outposts instruction. And what that means is the enemy, the Spanish, is going to place a mission outpost in the raid box, the lowest numbered raid box, which does not already contain an outpost of the same type. So in this case, the mission is going to go into Shiprock Box 1. If there was already one in Box 1 and a build outpost instruction was called for, the next mission would go into Raid Box 1 of Shiprock, which is the lowest die roll symbol of an area that does not already contain an outpost of the same type. So the maximum number of enemy outposts that you could have of the mission variety would be 6, because there are 6 areas. Now these missions, or these outposts here, they start on the lowest numbered raid box of that area, and they will begin to creep up the raid track. As they creep up the raid track, they become a little bit more difficult to get rid of, and their presence becomes more persistent. And essentially what these things are going to do is they're going to drag you, the player, down if you don't get rid of them. Best thing to do is nip them in the bud whenever possible. Missions are very easy to kill, but as you go into the Mexican period and then into the American period, they're going to build ranchos, which are much harder to kill and tend not to go away nearly as easy. The enemy will also establish forts via a historical event, and those are extremely difficult to get rid of, and historically it really never happened. Fort Defiance was abandoned for a short time, but in game terms it was never destroyed. So in this case, the enemy has executed an instruction, subvert the natives, which actually defaulted into a build outpost instruction, and all of this is summarized on the play aids. And once it's executed, it slides to the right to the inactive column. Next, we see we still have 4 enemy APs available, and the next instruction on the active column is a raid. It says raid 3, and what that means is we're going to take 3 instructions, or 3 APs, and we're going to put them in the Santa Fe box, and we're going to flip them over to their raid side, and now this represents an enemy column.